Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to High on History. I'm Jordan.
And I'm Liz, and today we are gonna mix it up, and we have some announcements to make. So, shall we start with the announcements?
Yeah, which announcement should we start with? It's quite a few.
Yeah, there are quite a few. Just the scheduling one.
Okay.
So, Jordan and I both work, 40-hour-a-week jobs. Putting out an episode once a week has been breakneck. And honestly, we started to lose some of the joy in the work. So we've decided that while we are going to continue weaving through, among other things, Paleolithic Africa, we're going to go to Cambodia, we're going to do all of that. We're also not going to chase it in such a rigid way. We're going to let ourselves go down rabbit holes. We're going to explore our passion projects as they become our passion projects. And we are going to do an episode every other week. For one thing, all of Jordan's episodes were on our payday, and all of mine were not. So that was frustrating.
Yeah, that was.
And then there's just the breakneck pace of putting out an episode, doing the research and the writing, saying all the things. For example, this week we're going to be talking about Hypatia. It's an incredibly nuanced story, and even though I have done a really good job of separating the legend from the history,
right.
It was a lot more I could have gone into. And so we're going to give ourselves the time. We're still going to trade off.
Yeah.
So each of us will now have a full month to research and really, really get into the grind of what we want.
Yeah.
So that is a big change coming up.
Yeah.
Also, we're very likely to be changing the day that the episodes come out. I think they're going to start coming out on Sunday.
Yeah, I think that's when we're going to start filming, and then if all things work out, we might be also having editing, so that might come out like a day later after we start editing our videos.
Right. We might even wind up doing the filming on Saturday so that we can release on Sunday at some point. But all things to
be determined
on that one. Okay. Which I guess brings us right into the heart of what we're doing today. So we are covering Hypatia.
Yes, for Women's History Month.
And two things. There's the legend of Hypatia.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's Hypatia.
Yeah.
And in a perfect world, I would get a lot more time to cover why the legend of Hypatia will always be told, and why it will always stand as a symbol for reason over extremism, for learning over ignorance.
Yeah.
There's some themes that are passed on, and really the legend around Hypatia grew within her lifetime.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
He was hidden behind your knee, so I was moving him.
Oh, yes. So we have decided that this wonderful hedgehog that Jordan gave me for Valentine's Day a couple of weeks ago, this is our mascot now. Oh, I wanted to put him, somewhere
where he can be seen.
We need to get him a pillow.
Straighten your knee.
No, it's not comfortable. Get the hedgehog a pillow. His own pillow.
Ah, yes, there we go.
Now he's properly mascotted.
There we go. Back to
and the truth about her murder is not as simple as it tends to be made out to be.
That video that I was watching about her right before, that was a gruesome murder.
It, and this is an interesting thing. Had it not been for the gruesomeness, the shock
Yeah.
of this murder in her world, in her time,
Yeah.
we probably might not know about her at all.
Right.
Because none of her works that we can definitively say, yes, she did this commentary, she edited this equation, none of that survives. Not in a way that we think we can see bits of it.
Pieces of her work, but yeah.
But, yeah, we don't have any direct evidence. So, there's another thing, too. Much is made of her as a scientist, as an astronomer, as a philosopher, and, this is important, as an innovator.
Yeah.
But there's no real evidence for that last part in particular.
Yeah.
She was not probably an innovator.
Yeah.
It is apparent that she knew how to use astrolabes and hydrometers.
Which is really cool.
She may have had the ability to adjust them, work on them, maybe even craft them.
I mean, and that is a very unique skill, not only for a woman, but even as a scientist back then to have a skill to do.
Right. And
now, hang on, before you get into anything. I kind of know what that is, what those tools are.
I don't, because that was, I just for once, I did not give a damn about the instruments.
What?
Well, okay, and it's weird too. I should have, but again, I was supposed to have a whole extra week. I would have gotten into this because among other things, her knowledge of those instruments was used against her.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's going to come up. But it is certainly clear that she used them, she knew how to use them, she taught her students how to use them, and she may have even been able to, like, repair them, make adjustments to them, possibly even make them. But she didn't invent them, which is a claim that is sometimes erroneously made. Both of those instruments were available centuries before her.
Okay.
So, this actually brings up, you said, well, it's rare for anybody to be able to do that, much less a woman.
Yeah.
And so, that brings up something that I do want to bring up real early in the story, is that, and this is important to understand, Hypatia was born to the city's wealthy elite.
Okay.
She was born to wealth and privilege. She lived an exceptional life of study and learning, deep philosophical argument and thought. Rhetoric, astronomy, mathematics, and astrology weren't all separate sciences. They were all ways of understanding. These people were, I will get into Neoplatonism, but these people were essentially trying to work on a unified theory of everything. That's the phrase that we would probably use to describe what they were doing.
Oh, okay.
Many of the sciences were essentially just extensions of each other. They were sort of all one interconnected science.
Oh.
So astrology, astronomy, mathematics, and when you think about it, even now, they all have places where they weave in and out of each other. This was, that weaving was a connection that they saw very clearly. And so even philosophy was part of a way of understanding the universe, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll get into this a little bit more when we get into Neoplatonism. But if we are to understand the true story of Hypatia, what we have to understand is Alexandria, the city that she lived in. Alexandria is spectacular in ways we will probably come to again and again. I have fallen in love with this city.
Oh yeah, no, I can't wait to get to Alexandria and one of my rabbit holes coming up.
Um, so I took some cliff notes here. I want to talk briefly about some of the buildings and the building of Alexandria because some of these locations come up in the story of Hypatia.
Yeah, that's what you were telling me.
Right? So Alexandria was founded by Alexander the Great of Macedonia in April of 331 before current era. So about 2,300 years ago.
Okay.
After conquering Egypt in 332, Alexander sought to establish a new Greek city as a center of trade and governance. He chose a strategic location along the Mediterranean coast near the Nile Delta, replacing an older Egyptian settlement called Rakatos. The primary architect was Dinocritus of Rhodes, who was tasked with designing the city using a grid system inspired by Greek urban planning. However, Alexandria left Egypt in 331 BC and never actually saw the city completed. He died in Babylon in 323 BCE, and his general Ptolemy I Soter took control of Egypt and began transforming Alexandria into one of the greatest intellectual and cultural hubs in history.
So, wait, hang on. You're telling me the Ptolemy line,
Ptolemy,
sorry, is a Macedonian line, not actually Egyptian lineage, who they become pharaohs of Egypt.
That is correct. Ptolemy was Alexander's general, his primary general.
Whoa.
He left him in charge of the city when he left the city. And I believe we'll get into the cast of characters. In fact, we're getting into Ptolemy right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ptolemy I Soter ruled 305 to 283 BCE, the city's first intellectual foundations. He was born in 367 BCE. He died in 283 BCE. He was declared pharaoh of Egypt in 305 BCE, founding the Ptolemaic dynasty.
Oh. That's crazy. Sorry, I skipped ahead on your notes. I didn't read to. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's great. His contributions to Alexandria. Ptolemy I understood that Greek intellectualism could legitimize his rule over Egypt, so he is the one who began the planning of all the institutions that we come to associate with Alexandria. He begins the planning of the library and the Museum. Museum is basically what it sounds like, museum. But what makes it spectacular is it's essentially the world's first research institute.
Oh, it's like basically a major university.
There was also an academy. There was a big university there. In addition to the library, also. Yes, and we're going to get into some of the building of that. So he began planning the museum and the library. So the museum was a place for study and debate rather than just a repository for books.
Okay.
Now, Ptolemy II, Philadelphus, ruled 283 to 246 BCE, the peak of Alexandria's learning institutions. He became pharaoh in 283 BCE. He expanded the library and the museum. He ordered the construction of the Pharos of Alexandria, the legendary lighthouse, and one of the seven wonders of the ancient world. And he commissioned the Septuagint translation, the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, as part of Alexandria's role in preserving knowledge.
Oh, that's cool.
So Ptolemy II was the one who completed the great library. Okay, it says, okay, I found this over and over again. This is fun. So, here it says, Ptolemy II enforced aggressive book collecting policies, ensuring the library's collection grew exponentially. That does not quite seem to cover it.
Yeah, right?
So, they sent ships out all over the world. He sent people out to find books all over the world.
Yeah.
And where they could, to take those books back to Alexandria to be copied. Also, people entering Alexandria were all but strip searched, and their books were taken to be copied.
Right.
The thing about book copying in this day and age is it takes a hot minute.
Mm-hmm.
It is not a weekend hobby.
It's done by hand, on papyrus. Ink has to be made.
It's a process. So
Yeah.
these books are
Copied.
borrowed. Yeah. See, the thing was, they take the books, they copy them. There's no mention that I found. I didn't have time to look very hard, but it's very unclear to me whether they returned the originals to their rightful owners, or how they accomplished that, if they did.
A little silly YouTube video that I watched didn't make any mention of them ever being returned either.
Yeah, no, all the stuff I watched was like, they would, well, one video specifically used the word confiscate, and that does seem to be the,
yeah, I feel like that was a word brought up a couple times in the video that I watched.
Yeah, so under Ptolemy II, books were confiscated. Now, there's a, I'm not justifying it,
Yeah.
but Ptolemy II, like Ptolemy I, and like Alexander, when he founded the city, he intended for this to happen on some level.
Yeah.
They understood knowledge to be power. Those things were practically synonymous.
Yeah.
So he who held the knowledge, all the knowledge of the world,
Had the most power.
had the most power. And this is a time, kind of a glory moment for the Age of Reason, right?
Right.
Philosophers are going to flock to Alexandria from all the corners of the world.
Right.
And
they did.
And they did. Also, at Alexandria's founding, Caesar had made it clear that all citizens were to be equal under the law.
Oh.
This was an ideal of his. So Muslims and Christians and Jews and people from this weird pagan sect and that weird pagan sect, scholars, thinkers, mathematicians,
We're all equal.
well, were,
Ish.
yeah, very, very much ish, but it was not a place where it was legal to outlaw a religion.
Yeah.
And the Ptolemies kept this.
Yeah?
Yeah, they did.
Oh.
They did. Weirdly, it'll play into the story that long after the Ptolemies were gone and the Romans were the city prefects, they attempted to keep it too.
Oh, wow.
Losing battle. But, that brings us to Ptolemy the Third. So, Ptolemy expanded the library and the museum. He maintained their prestige. He was great about making sure that things were upkept and updated. Not only did he expand, but he also went out of his way to preserve what existed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He created a second library at the Serapeum of Alexandria. The Serapeum is also, at its core, a pagan temple to the god Serapis.
Oh, yeah?
And this is going to come up later, and it's an extremely important location in the story. It's a It housed additional texts and acted as an extension of the Great Library. He focused mainly on preserving Egyptian religious traditions and blending Greek and Egyptian culture.
Oh. Huh.
It was under Ptolemy III that the library reached its peak, housing. Here, the numbers got wonky. Some people said around 500,000, 400,000. Other people think that's too conservative, and they may have had a million or almost a million books. But either way, it was unbelievably extensive. It was so extensive that, as large as the library was, they were building overflow, and the Serapeum was
an overflow site.
Essentially.
So are we talking about like Library of Congress comparable?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Okay. It was the Library of Congress for the ancient world. Absolutely. And so again, as a result, anyone who could have the wealth and stature to travel to Alexandria to learn was going to do that. And it was renowned for it's well, again, we're going to get to Neoplatonism here soon, but it was a renowned center of learning. People respected the teachers and the professors there. This comes up.
Yeah.
And here's what's important to know about those buildings by the time we get to Hypatia. So Hypatia is born 355 to 370 current era. So that's 500 years after the Ptolemies build these buildings.
Okay.
They are in disrepair. In fact, let's see, I can't remember. The Roman Empire took control of Egypt in 30 BCE. So, about the halfway mark between when Ptolemy finishes building and when Hypatia is born.
Okay.
Now,
wow.
When Caesar took Alexandria, he set fire to the ships.
Yeah, the burning of Alexandria.
And the ships set fire to the docks.
Yep.
And this is how the Library of Alexandria burns. There is some speculation that what books were saved from the library at Alexandria were taken to the overflow in the Serapeum.
Oh.
This comes up later. So what was left of the Library of Alexandria may have been housed in the Serapeum and possibly other, probably pagan temples at the time, because Christianity wasn't really up and coming during Julius Caesar. In fact, let's see, Caesar 30 BCE. Christianity's not a thing yet.
I mean, it is, but barely.
During Julius Caesar?
Oh, wait, no. Christ is like crucified in 33. So no, I guess it's not a thing.
Yeah. And Christianity doesn't really become a thing until kind of well after Christ's death. Like so many people in that time, we're very fond of deifying recently dead people for a moment. So by the time of Hypatia, who is late 4th and early 5th century current era, the Museion still existed, but was gradually losing state funding. When the Romans took over Alexandria, they just didn't get the vision of Greek, that reason, that dedication to learning and reason and knowledge. That just was not their game. They were kind of about governance, and they did not properly fund the maintenance of any of these buildings.
I mean, that makes sense.
So now they're being maintained, essentially by probably the slave class of the scholars.
Right.
And they're not being funded. They're not, the focus is no longer on keeping Alexandria the great intellectual hub of the world. That's not really how Romans think. They want all eyes to point to Rome. They want it to be their jewel. They didn't really care so much about making their vassal states,
elaborate.
Also, you wouldn't want to, in that time, give another city like that a great deal of power, because then it might turn around and become a rival, as we will get to with Carthage at some point. So there's that.
Become a passion project for us soon.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, I can't wait.
So that's what you need to know about, that's part of what you need to know about the city that Hypatia is born into. The other thing that you really need to know about this is that Alexandria was a city that was so riotous that other riotous cities, and let me be clear here, in this time, and in this part of the world, there was enormous social and wealth inequality between the haves and the have-nots. And life was generally miserable for the have-nots. So riots were almost a way of life. People did not appreciate being under the militant thumb of the Roman Empire or the Persian Empire or whatever empire it was.
Yeah.
And when they were basically, half starved and they have no power, they have no control over their lives, they get antsy.
Right.
And in spite of the fact that rioting in these larger cities in particular was very, very common, it was so common in Rome, in Alexandria, that other people in its time commented how easy it was to just set off any old spark in Alexandria. It was a place of constant riots.
Oh, wow.
It had, one guy basically just said, they need no pretense. They don't even need an excuse.
Wow.
So, and that was at its own time. It was known to be a riotous place. And again, keep in mind throughout this story that Hypatia is born of wealth and privilege.
Okay.
Now, I do want to get to Hypatia herself in some quick order, because Hypatia herself isn't even the part of the story that's the story yet.
Oh yeah, fun. No, this is QC. She was amazing. I wish her work still existed.
It is a crying shame that we can't prove that any of her works exist. We do think we see traces of it from time to time, but there's no record that we can point to and go, yes, Hypatia wrote this. Yeah. And yet we know from other writings she edited and elucidated on, wrote commentaries on the works of Euclid, on other great mathematical works. In particular, mathematics seems to have been her passion project.
Nice.
Nothing is known about her mother, but her father was Theon of Alexandria. He's the last known scholar of the Museum.
Oh, wow.
And not that there weren't scholars after him, he's the last one that we've got a good record of. He was a mathematician, and it's not really clear why, but from a very young age, it seems that he was a take your daughter to work kind of dad.
Aww.
Yeah. So he taught Hypatia in the very best traditions of all it was to be reasoned and thoughtful and good.
Yeah.
He taught her mathematics. He taught her his Neoplatonism, of course. He was also a Neoplatonist. He taught her in philosophy. Well, he didn't teach her, but she got an education in philosophy.
Oh, wow.
In rhetoric, astrology, astronomy. He would have taught her in that.
So for a woman back then, she got an amazing education that was not typical for her.
It was no. It wasn't particularly common even for women in her rare class. However, the women in her class were partially educated.
Yeah.
Their education typically would go so far, and then they would get married. But
Right.
Neoplatonists were, and this is one of the reasons why they really weren't targeted by Christians there for a while. There's belief in the one. It's kind of equivalent to, it equates to God.
Yeah.
And also both sects had a focus on this idea that the body and sex were,
Yeah.
Things of the flesh. They didn't help one's soul get closer to God.
Yeah.
And that was the ultimate point. So both sects eschewed sort of sexual pleasure and things like that. And Hypatia notoriously died of virgin.
Yeah.
Yeah. I should take this moment to mention that I will continue to say Hypatia through this episode. That's how most people pronounce it today.
The Latin version.
That is the Latin pronunciation, but it is in Greek. Hypatia.
Hypatia.
So just for that. It's also clear that she was so bright at it, so good at it, that by the time she was a teenager, she was contributing to some of these works. She may have contributed to Euclid's Elements. She may have contributed to Ptolemy's Third Alchemist. In fact, actually, this is the only thing we know for sure she did, because the foreword in that book by her father credits her.
Oh, wow.
For the commentary in that particular book. It does. So she's credited. Oh, I was going to say, she was not the only scholar there at the Museum who was a woman. There was a woman who probably lived before her, but that may have overlapped into her childhood. And I did forget her name. But she doubled
Polygantha or something?
Yeah, see, I wasn't going to try. But she's credited for a method to double the cube.
Yeah.
And other than we know that, we don't know anything else about her.
Yeah.
And the only reason we know about that, or even that she is a she, is because she's how she's referred to in a commentary by somebody else who's complaining about her methods.
Yup.
So, rare, uncommon, yes.
Yeah.
Impossible, unheard of, no. And here's another thing to take into account. A lot of people of wealth and privilege, just the same as everybody else, born and died, and we will never know their name. Again, if Hypatia herself had not been murdered, regardless of her fame in her own time, chances are we wouldn't be talking about her today.
Right.
And that's a weird truth that became immediately apparent. So she studied astronomy, she studied astrology, she studied philosophy, logical reasoning, rhetoric, and public speaking.
Mathematics. Like, woman's well-rounded education. I assume she's got science in there somewhere, too. Like, I get, the types of sciences they had available back then.
Maybe, but the idea of this as science in this time
It is science.
It is, but it isn't. There's
Yeah.
no scientific method here.
Oh, yeah.
They're not really playing with... They're making logical argumentations and mathematical calculations. It is science, but it's also philosophy.
Yeah.
And it's a very, very soft science.
Very
soft. Yeah, she was brilliant by all accounts, and we know this even from later because she had students who came all over the world to listen to her speak, to learn from her. It's clear she taught students in the use of the hydrometer and the astrolabe. It's clear that her students included Christians and others who came to see her for her logic and her wisdom.
Yeah.
And she was revered, even close to deified in her own time. Like there were people who certainly revered her at basically at that level.
Well, at one
She
point
was so well
sainted.
renowned. Yeah, so the church also sainted the guy who murdered her. So
I mean, yeah.
She is believed to have worked on a commentary
Comedy.
for Arithmetica, a foundational work in algebra by the ancient Greek mathematician Diophantus of Alexandria. She wrote a commentary. It's believed to have written a commentary on Apollonius's Conics. Conics, excuse me.
Wow.
It is important to note that, again, that scholars in her time spent more time elucidating on the works of others than actually innovating anything new themselves. So they'd reached this point where they had all this knowledge that they could look at. They could study it, they could argue about it, they could fix mistakes and move that research along. And that's what they were doing.
Right. They were expanding on the knowledge that they already had.
Yes. Hypatia is credited with editing and revising Elements, ensuring its clarity and consistency for students and scholars. So this is interesting. It appears that what she did to Euclid's Elements was edit it in such a way that made it clear to her students what he was talking about.
Oh. She
updated the text.
Yeah, she made it understandable.
Yes. Almagest by Claudius Ptolemy was the most influential astronomical treatise of the ancient world, laying out a geocentric model of the universe. Hypatia may have written or taught using a commentary on this work, making Ptolemaic astronomy more accessible to her students. Her father Theon of Alexandria wrote an extensive commentary on Almagest, and it is possible she collaborated with or continued his work. This might be a good time to mention a little bit about Hypatia's teaching style. In spite of the fact that she was extremely wealthy and she was extremely privileged, she seems to have had a sort of liberalism in her style. Not only did she teach in, a hall school where she was a leader of her own school essentially for a while. It was a Neoplatonic school, but not only is that true, but crap, I forgot where I was going with that.
She had her own school?
Well, and essentially, so it's like a school in the way we use the word school of thought.
Okay, so she had her own,
She had her own students and people who really admired and revered her type of thought, so essentially that was the word that they used for that at the time essentially just translates to school now.
Yeah.
Except that the idea of it is so far from what you and I would understand as a school that,
Yeah,
it's
right.
not a good word to use.
Kind of like they're just like followers, but I don't want to call them followers. They learn from her. They understand her teachings and admire her work.
Okay. So that's her education. And now we get to a very important aspect. I did this in sections because all of these things are contextual to understanding what happened to her and why it happened to her.
Right.
So, Neoplatonism was a school of thought founded by the philosopher Plotinus, who lived from 204 to 270 AD. That's CE. I really had a hard time understanding this, but there's the one, the intellect, and the soul.
Okay.
I think they're definitely using the word intellect in a way that I am not at all understanding.
Okay.
But the idea here was to bring, well, two things. You know, in the Lord's Prayer, on earth as it is in heaven?
Yeah.
So, being one with God so much that it shines, manifests into the material world.
Ooh.
They wouldn't have gone that far.
Yeah. I know what you're saying. I
But
get it. Yeah.
they're trying to become one with God through intellect, reason, knowledge, learning, debate.
I mean, hey.
Now, in 234 to 305 AD, comes along this guy Porphyry. Porphyry basically is the one who says, hey, the one, that's God. If you're looking for God, this thing that we call the one, that's God. Right?
Yeah.
And he started playing, and he's at a time when rising religious interest is really showing up. So
Yeah.
he winds up putting a lot of emphasis into the soul's transition into the afterlife. If anybody tells you that Hypatia was all reason, know that her and Theon very much were not. Theon wrote a book on, oh, I forget what it was. Never mind, I'm going to skip that thought because I lost it. This was supposed to come up in next week's research. But basically, to say that they were purely rational and that they didn't hold any beliefs that we would consider religious or superstitious is just, that's going way too far. So
Yeah.
the rationalism comes to a point.
Okay.
Now there was another school of Neoplatonism that was less rational. There's this guy Iamblichus. He shows up from 245 to 325 current era.
Okay.
He puts a bunch of emphasis into religious rites to purify the soul.
Yeah.
Sort of brings paganism back into Neoplatonism. And
Okay.
in any case, Hypatia did not belong to his particular school, though. She was of the Porphyry and Plotinus school. So that dedication to reason, to science, etc.
Okay. Okay.
And now, having gone over that, it's time to start talking about the cast of some of the other characters. We are going to start with, where's my cast of characters?
Uh-oh, notes got mixed up.
Out of order, are we?
I thought we did really good at trying to keep them in order.
I did too. I really did. Oh, there it is, okay. Oh, my earring just fell out. Oh, well.
Oh,
Terrible.
terrible. Malfunction.
So it's time to begin to introduce some of our cast of characters.
Okay.
And the first is going to be Theophilus of Alexandria. He's the patriarch from 385 to 412 current era. patriarch here in this context, archbishop. He was Archbishop of Alexandria from 385 to 412, and he was a key figure in the aggressive Christianization of the city. So Theophilus was virulently anti-pagan, at least in policy and some enforcement.
Okay.
But there were limits for him.
So was he Christian?
Oh yes, he was very Christian. Rome by this point is becoming increasingly Christian. And it's not just any Christianity, it's kind of a radicalized Christianity, particularly in this particular time and place.
Okay.
Now the Emperor of Rome was Theodosius.
Okay.
Now, he made Nicene Christianity. Nope, I didn't look up what that was either. But he made Nicene Christianity the state religion.
Okay.
In 380 current era. And he issued the Theodosian Decrees 391 current era, which banned pagan rituals, closed temples, and criminalized sacrifices. He ordered the destruction of pagan religious sites, including the Serapeum. That last one probably needs to be fact-checked, because he was virulently anti-pagan, but he definitely had you guys are okay towards the Neoplatonists like Hypatia. He didn't really target them.
Yeah.
Whereas this other group, no qualms, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And now that we've discussed Theophilus, that brings us to the beginning of the story of the death of Hypatia, which unfortunately we know more about that than we do about her actual life.
Right.
Sad, but true. So it can be said, okay, when I was going through and doing the research on this, this is a series of calamitous events, all exasperating each other and making each other worse. Nobody takes a step back, nobody backs down, nobody stops for a second.
Yeah.
So, the Serapeum was a temple that stood atop a high platform dominating Alexandria's skyline. It housed a vast library.
Yeah.
It was possibly the annex of the Great Library of Alexandria. And the cult of Serapis had long been central to Alexandria's religious life. And pagan philosophers, including Neoplatonists, were associated with the Serapeum, making it a stronghold of intellect and resistance. That's important.
Yeah.
Hold on. Gotta take a note. I gotta flip the page. Gotta find out where I am here.
Dun dun dun.
Do 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 do. Okay. So here's what happens. The Serapeum's largely considered a library in okay, what year is it? Let me check. Oh my goodness, I don't think I got the... Oh, there it is. So in 391, current era,
Okay.
a pagan temple, an active pagan temple is found inside the Serapeum. After pagan rituals, particularly like open public pagan rituals, pagan sacrifices, all of these have been outlawed by Theodosius.
Yeah.
And that's being enforced by, oh, gosh, what's his name? These names were really hard to keep straight, actually.
Yeah, I believe that.
But Theophilus, I believe.
Yeah.
Theophilus sees that it's a pagan temple and takes the statues outside to display them. People start throwing vegetables and so there's a crowd of Christians who've been riled up.
Yeah.
And they're throwing food at the statues, mocking the pagan gods. So, in retaliation, the pagan philosophers and temple priests launched attacks on Christians, killing some and using the Serapeum as a stronghold. I want to say that this is kind of the moment too when at one point, oh no, that was the Jewish conflict. That wasn't this conflict.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was a different conflict I was thinking about. So the pagan philosophers wind up holed up inside the Serapeum.
Okay.
And they've got some Christian hostages, no less.
Oh boy.
And they're probably torturing them.
Sacrificing them to their pagan gods.
No. What? You know better.
I was joking because that's what the extra, that's what one of the radios said that I was watching. I think he was joking too. He likes to fill in some shit like that occasionally.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So anyway. Eventually, basically, the government comes down and they're like, hey, look, you, pagans, you won't get arrested if you leave this temple. We're not going to kill you, we're not going to arrest you. Basically, you're pardoned, you can go home if you vacate the temple.
Yeah, just stop.
And then the soldiers went into the temple in their place, and they destroy everything. So this temple is the Serapeum. It wasn't really a temple, like we noted before. It was essentially an annex section of the library. And these guys go in, they topple statues, they destroy books. If the burning of the Library of Alexandria was not at all on purpose, this was an absolute tragedy.
Yeah.
They deliberately start going after knowledge.
Yeah.
So, Theophilus is basically vying for power, political power in the city.
Yeah.
And he's got this technique that Cyril, his nephew, which we're about to get to here, winds up using ruthlessly. He's figured out how to rile up the city's poor into fits of religious extremism.
Yeah.
And he's learned how to use this as a weapon. And then, as horrible as Theophilus was, Cyril is so much worse. And this is interesting, too, because Theophilus actually avoided Hypatia.
Yeah.
He didn't have a problem with her.
Right.
However, in 412 current era,
Yeah.
He died kind of unexpectedly. I understand a little on the young side.
Oh.
And this started a civil war between his nephew, a guy named Cyril, and...
This is the stuff you're looking for down here. No, that's the page you just dropped. This is a section somewhere.
Okay, here we go. So here's the thing. Cyril was so ruthless, he was such a terrible individual, that he wasn't even liked in his own time. Other Christians were like, nah, we don't claim him. He is not a good guy.
Yeah.
So when Theophilus dies suddenly, it was kind of an understood thing that Cyril was supposed to be his successor, but he never officially named him so. There's no bona fides. And he's not very popular.
Yeah.
So he winds up competing for the archdeacon, or competing with Timothy, possibly an archdeacon,
Okay.
Timotheus.
Timotheus.
Timotheus had the support of the pagan and the Jewish population of
Right.
Alexandria, even though he was a Christian, and Cyril definitely did not.
Yeah.
Cyril came out ahead of that struggle. He seems to do that a lot. My notes about got out of order. I tried so hard.
These are ones you've already gone through.
I know that. That's
Okay.
just the whole stack now. See, that's the last one. Neoplatonism.
But you haven't gone through these, I don't think.
Yes, I have.
Oh.
Oh, okay. Okay. Jewish theater incident. And the gospel incident. Murder of Pyrex. Here we go. Now we're over it. No, you were right. I hadn't gone through these yet. Have gone through these. Okay. Now, Theophilus dies in 412. In 415, there is an incident at a Jewish theater. So, a Christian man, who we don't know who he was,
Yeah.
entered a Jewish theater during an event, and the audience believed he was a spy.
Oh.
They believed he was a Christian spy.
Oh, nice.
When we say theater, too, don't necessarily think, oh, a play. No, a theater was an arena, essentially.
An amphitheater.
It
was
right.
where the gladiator events took place. Speeches
Except
were
most
held.
of them were quite a bit smaller.
Well, I mean, I'm just throwing shit and stuff out there.
So the Jewish audience, believing he was a spy sent by Cyril's Christian factions to monitor and provoke them, reacted violently. They seized the man. They beat him badly. Sources say he was, some sources anyway, say that he was killed.
Oh, wow. I mean, you did say that town liked to riot, so hey.
Oh, it did.
Now all I've got is a song stuck in my head by 3 Days Grace.
So Cyril used this as, you'll see this as a pattern with him too. You kill one of his, and he'll use it to his great advantage.
Yeah.
So he used the death of that, probably Christian spy of his,
Right.
as an excuse to go absolutely hog wild on the Jewish community. He orders this crackdown. He demands that those who are responsible be punished, so the Jewish leaders protested, arguing that the man had provoked the attack.
Yeah.
Um, believing that the Christians are going to retaliate, it gets worse.
Yeah.
In response to Cyril's crackdown on the Jewish community, some of them got together one night and they basically let a rumor fly through town that a church is on fire. And all the Christians run to go save the church, as people do.
Yeah, right? In general, save the town.
And then they were subsequently attacked, ambushed.
Oh my.
On their way to protect the church.
Wow.
And because, again, I'm pretty sure people were killed.
Yeah.
Cyril retaliates again, because notice he's a principal player, so he's never there to actually have to suffer any consequences whatsoever. This is part of the problem. Always has been, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Cyril retaliated, leading a Christian mob against the Jewish population. They burned, looted, synagogues, homes, markets.
Oh, wow.
Pretty much as they went along. We definitely started this too late.
Yeah, we did. We're almost done, though.
We are getting there. So, this action infuriated Orestes. And that brings us back to our cast of characters real quick. The brief biographies. Let's talk briefly about Cyril and Orestes, because these two men and their power struggle is the primary, the principal root of how Hypatia herself gets killed.
Right.
So Cyril succeeded his uncle Theophilus as patriarch in Alexandria, that is, again, archbishop. He led the expulsion of Jews from Alexandria. Now, sources are a little divided on this. He may have just run out the people that he believed or thought was responsible, or at least that may have been his intention. Either way, actually, a lot of the Jewish population fled, which was sort of a political problem for the Roman governor.
Right.
And that brings us to Orestes, the Roman prefect. Governor is not the correct word here, but he's the guy who's supposed to be keeping the peace. He's supposed to be in charge of keeping the empire's order in Egypt.
Yeah.
In all of Egypt. And he's not doing a very good job.
Yeah.
So Orestes was the Roman imperial governor of Egypt during the early 5th century, appointed by the Eastern Roman Emperor. He didn't like Cyril very much. Cyril was an affront to that Roman imperial order. He's instigating violence. He's
causing problems.
He's an extremist. His followers are extremists.
Yeah.
Orestes doesn't like him that much. So brings us back to... Oh, here we go. Expulsion of the Jews. We covered that. They were thrown out of the city. So, not too far removed either from the Serapeum incident.
Yeah.
So Orestes saw Cyril's actions as completely illegitimate. Cyril's Christian supporters, including a group of Nitrian monks, viewed Orestes as the enemy of the church. This is interesting. Somewhere along the way, Orestes himself actually converts to Christianity, which is interesting.
Okay, wow.
So now you have that incident. So the Jewish theater in 415, and then much closer to the events of Hypatia's death herself. She was killed in 415.
Yeah.
Right. So the Jewish theater incident, this is happening. That's kind of the background on that. And then there was history I really wanted to get into, but I guess this episode is taking forever. And I'm sorry.
I have to go potty.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
So then Cyril's like, oh, you know what? I'll give you the Gen Z version. That's what we'll do here. So then Cyril does, I don't know, this kind of felt like a mockery. Like, this just seemed like a symbolic sort of dog and pony show. Cyril goes to Orestes, well, we'll meet at this place. Let's try to have peace.
Yeah.
And he presents Orestes the Gospels. And I don't know whether Orestes was, like, supposed to swear on them or whatever. Anyway, Orestes declines. This is interesting because he is in fact a pagan, or he is in fact a Christian.
Yeah.
But the symbolic thing is, Cyril is trying to get him, the Roman prefect, to bow to the church.
Yeah.
And Orestes is standing up for secular reason and law, so he's like, no, we're not doing this.
Yeah.
And Cyril gets really upset. He gets really upset. And he gives a speech in which he basically accuses Hypatia of being a witch and counseling Orestes to turn him against him and chanting him to be against the church. Right, so we do see, and this is probably how the feminist element in her story kind of comes up.
Yeah.
Because what is clear here is that she's a rarefied woman of learning, of privilege, of extreme respect and prestige. Certainly respect that far outmatched Cyril's own.
Right.
Cyril was not particularly respected. He had power, but people did not like him. He was a jerk. He was a jerk. Yeah, he was a murderous bastard.
Yeah.
So yeah, Orestes wouldn't swear on the Gospels. Cyril goes and basically accuses Hypatia of being a witch. Now, that accusation may have already been going around about her. Again, she's the elite. So in the lower classes, people are talking crap on the elite all the time. She kind of becomes a target, though.
Yeah.
A, because as a Neoplatonist, they can still pretend that they don't know what they absolutely know. They could be like, oh, she's a pagan.
Right.
But also because, like many other learned women, she's just accused of witchcraft.
Because she's smart.
Because she has the ear of someone in power.
Yeah.
And that actually does bring us... We are getting close to the end. I swear. I've gone through these. See? Wait, is this really the last one? Excellent. So this brings us to the murder of a guy named Hierax. Also 415 CE. This is the kind of the more immediate prelude.
Okay.
So after Orestes rejects the gospel,
Yeah.
Hirix shows up at another theater where people are talking to Orestes about the civil unrest and so on and so forth. And here again, he's one of Cyril's men. He's perceived as a spy. He's seized upon, beaten badly, probably died from his wounds later.
Yeah.
He's beaten really badly. And this caused a group of radicals to go after Orestes himself. Somebody actually throws a rock at Orestes, this guy named Ammonius probably. Or at least Ammonius is the guy who pays the price for it, because they drag him out of the crowd and have him tortured and executed. So Cyril loses yet another man to the Roman guards, and now he's pissed. And so he's got people all whipped up into a frenzy about Hypatia being a witch, and he's determined to take control of the city one way or the other. Did he order the mob to set on Hypatia? No. Did he create the environment in which that was almost entirely bound to happen?
Absolutely.
Yes. And had he been using radicalized poor people to carry out vigilante mob violence and justice in the name of the church? Yeah, he'd been doing that for a while.
Yeah, that was his MO.
Right. So in 415, she is coming home from the Museum where she worked.
Yeah.
And she's taking one of the coastal roads. She is set upon by a group of extremists.
Yeah.
And she's drugged from her carriage into a church where they use shells and broken pottery to flay and dismember her.
Yeah, they just savagely dismember her.
They very savagely dismembered her, and then they burn her body.
Yeah.
And this murder is so shocking that in the legend, like to this day, I was going to get into this more. We're going to have to cut this short. Maybe we'll get into this. Because this moment in the legend is marked as the death of reason, the beginning of the Dark Ages.
Yeah.
When we take a marker and go, well, when did the Dark Ages start? There are lots of people who have put Hypatia's murder.
Yeah.
This is the death of Hellenistic reason, so they say.
Oh, wow.
At the beginning of the true Dark Ages.
That's amazing.
Where religious extremism takes over the world, takes over power,
yeah.
and things get really, really bad, as they always do when religious extremists get into power.
Yeah.
Little lesson from history there. We're going to call this good, and I don't think I'm quite done with Hypatia. There was so much in here, and so much I still had to skip. I would like to get into debunking some of that myth
yes.
around that, and also sort of the fall of the Hellenistic reason schools.
So
that sounds
next
like fun.
week on High on History.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's not actually next week.
It's not going to be next week. It's going
I
to
guess
be.
we're going to do it on the 29th is what I think we're going to do it on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm doing Rosa Parks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that. By subscribing, you help us reach our New Year's resolution of 100 subscribers by December of 2025. We are currently at 36. Thank you so much. And we are only in March. So this is March 7th, and we've got 36 of you wonderful subscribers. Thank you so much.
Coming back, please subscribe if you haven't already.
And share us with your friends so that they can subscribe if they are ever so inclined. Do hit the like button if you loved this video and love what we do, and share us with all your friends. Don't forget to subscribe. It's free, of course, and if you hit the notification bell, you will never miss our winding rabbit hole. And if you have any comments or questions, post them below. We will shout you out in the next video. So we actually did not have any comments to shout out this week. No worries, no worries. We'll get you next time.
Right.
But we did want to welcome some. We wanted to welcome somebody more.
We wanted to welcome our friend Pudgy to our team. He will be kind of a behind the scenes, helping us with potentially editing and research.
No, we weren't
going to necessarily announce what he's doing per se, but he'll be helping with behind the scenes things. And yeah, those are some of the things that he might be helping us with once he
we're gonna leave it open. He really wants to be involved in the project. The actual history research, not so much his thing. That's okay, because we need a lot of other help.
Yep.
Lord knows. So, thank you so much, as always, for being with us tonight. Live long and prosper.
Bye. I'm out.